to AAUW's Conversations in Our Community. AAUW is the American Association of University Women, and it's a group that started in the area just before suffrage, when there was a lot of effort to try and get people to get a college education, get the women to vote, and give more opportunities to women. And we're still doing that. It's one of the best kept secrets in Auburn. And we work really, really hard to help women. We give scholarships, and we also promote and help write and pass legislation that helps women and girls. And I'm going to talk about another well-kept secret in Auburn, which are the placer museums. So today, my guest is Brianna Ryan, and I want to ask you a little bit about what you do and what your title is.
Wonderful. So yes, I am, they call me the supervising curator for the Placer County Museums Division. So I work with our division. We have 8 different museums throughout Placer County, so I help to keep things moving along.
Why do we need museums in Placer County?
That's a good question. Placer County is a really historically significant area. There's so many things that have happened here in the past, beyond just the gold rush, which really did transform the area. We have the Transcontinental Railroad. We have Lake Tahoe. The 1960 Squaw Valley Winter Olympics were here in Placer County. So those are just a few examples of what is significant about the history of this area. So many sites that are on the National Register of Historic Places even in this area. And that's actually something that a lot of our museums share in common, is that they are on the National Register.
Can you tell me about some of the museums that are on the National Register?
Oh, sure. One of them is in Penryn. It's called the Griffith Quarry Museum. It's on the National Register of Historic Places for the United States of America because of its relationship to the building that happened here in California and throughout the United States, actually. It's a granite quarry that was established in the 1860s, and with this Transcontinental Railroad that went through the county, they were able to transport this granite to Sacramento, San Francisco, and throughout the United States. It was used in a lot of really significant projects, like the San Francisco Mint, the Mare Island Dry Dock, and places like that. And so because of its association to these really historic locations, it's on the National Register, and we have a museum at the quarry site.
So what's in a museum, and is this for like little kids or adults? I mean, what do you see? I have this image of a quarry.
Yes, so the quarry, it kind of depends on what you want your visit to be like. And so some people want to go and explore the quarry site, and there's some wonderful hiking trails that you can take. There's a beautiful overlook of the Sacramento Valley. But for those, especially with small children, if you want to get an introduction to the site and have a chance to play with some really hands-on interactive elements to our exhibit, it's a really good place to start your visit. And so it's the original stone office building that Griffith used when he was operating this quarry site. And so if you want a nice, dry, warm place to go and get an overlay of the land and understand why it's significant, and maybe learn a little bit more about the Penryn area and see some really nice artifacts from the history of the area, you would go into the museum. And it's open on weekends from 12 to 4.
So what are some other, that sounds great. I would love to take little kids or big kids there. And are there other museums that might be of interest to kids?
Definitely. So the Gold Rush Museum is the next one I would like to talk about. That one is really fun for children and families because we also have a lot of those hands-on interactive things that kids like. One of the things at the Gold Rush Museum is this indoor panning stream where you can get real gold in your little gold pan. And so we have our docents help teach you how to gold pan. And then there's just a lot of fun sounds and a lot of fun things that you can do and photo opportunities just to learn more about the gold rush. the development of the communities here in Placer County that was a result of this major influx of people that came to the area. And so that's a really fun one for kids. Especially my two children, I have a 9 and a 7-year-old, and that's one of their favorite museums because you get to play in the water and try to, make your fortune in gold while you're there.
That's great. So is it real gold?
It is real gold. There is still gold to be found in this area. Yeah. Some of the other museums are also just really great for children. There's the Bernhard Museum. That's here in Auburn, and we do a living history program there as well. And so we get between 3,000 and 4,000 third graders go to that museum every year to feel what it's like to step back in time. They come dressed up and they're there to literally grind wheat and turn butter, and they bake biscuits in our 1889 wood stove, which they get to eat. And so there's just a lot of layers of fun for the kids. They are scrubbing laundry on old washboards. They're playing marbles and making fruit crates, things like that. So while they're coming for a day in the life of what it was like to live on a Victorian era farm, which is a lot of work, and so they're excited to be there, and they're scrubbing laundry, which I'm sure at their own homes it's not a high priority, but it's just that really immersive experience.
Okay, so that's called living history?
That is called living history, yeah. And so that's for third graders. We do living history at a new museum also. Our newest museum is the Fruitvale Schoolhouse Museum. And so that's another one that's great for kids. And even if it's not living history, it's still, these are still museums that you can go and just see history, see these pieces of daily life that aren't part of our lives anymore. I mean, how many people have a hand pump that is how they get their water for their house? So these are fun interactives for those kids.
That's really fun. True confession, I was a history teacher, and I love the museums, and that's why I was so excited to have you here. And I actually had the opportunity to get trained in several of these museums, and that's very special. I feel so much more connected to my community as a result. So can you give us a little background on when the museum started and how they progressed and how they got to where they are today?
Oh, sure. So something that I think is really special about this area in particular is that Placer County established its first museum in 1948. And so we have grown to have 8 museums now, which I think is just wonderful. And I should also mention that these are all free museums.
Everything is free for everybody, anytime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no admission. Our events are free. We were established to preserve and share the history of this region with the public, and so we're real excited to do that. So I mentioned that in 1948 we established our first museum. It was called the Placer County Museum back then, and it was established for the centennial of the gold rush, or the gold discovery.
Yes.
So that had happened in 1848. And so the Centennial Committee and all of these really wonderful people realized that there was a history to tell here, and that, if you don't preserve it and share it, that it could be lost. And so they set forth collecting history, collecting documents, photographs, artifacts, oral histories, interviews, letters, memoirs, things like that. And so that really formed the basis of our collection. And it gave an opportunity to kind of, have this little gem here in Auburn where if people want to come and learn about the gold rush in California and how it transformed the California we know today, it was a museum that you could go and see.
That sounds so much fun. I mean, it's one thing to read about history in a book, and you can intellectually get it, but to go and actually hold the placer pan to try to find gold, or to see the clothes that they're wearing and experience it with this living history is amazing. It just brings it to life. And I think that's how kids learn the best, by actually doing things.
I think so. I think it's kind of eye-opening for a lot of the people that come, especially, they think, I'm going to make my fortune in gold. I'm going to get my gold pen, but it's cold. You're keeping your hands in the water. It's actually really hard, even if you get a little flake, to learn how to get it out so that you actually have that gold, So you're right. It's those experiences, I think, that help to just give an opportunity for people to understand a little better what life was like.
Yeah. How did you get into this field?
Oh, that's a good question. I should mention that when I graduated high school, I received an AAUW scholarship.
Oh,
wow. Of the scholarships.
That's great.
To help go to college. And so I went to Chico State University.
Wonderful.
I studied anthropology and American studies and did a concentration in museum studies. And so it really just opened my eyes. I have always loved California history. My family has lived in this state since the 1700s, and so I've always just been fascinated to learn more. And that's where anthropology opened my eyes to the idea that artifacts and the things that people leave behind, their material culture, can really help you to get that deeper understanding of the past and how it was lived. And so then I did several internships and got to work with some really wonderful museums around Northern California, and got my master's degree from Sacramento State in public history, and I've been fortunate to be working in different museums for about 17 years now.
Wow, that's fascinating. So can you describe a day at work, and what do you do all day?
Oh, okay. Well, it kind of depends on the day, and like I said, I'm one of the curators that we have in our museum department. We have a curator for the education programs, a curator for the archive that manages the historic records of Placer County, a curator for the museum collection, so those are all the objects. I started in the archive when I got here to Placer County. And now, as the supervising curator, I get to work with everybody. And so, depending on the day, I might be at the archive doing reference services, or I might be leading exhibit meetings, because we have a lot of fun projects that we do throughout the year. We try to rotate our exhibits out and give something new and interesting to see. Or another thing that I do is I manage our volunteer program. So I might be interviewing somebody who's interested in just learning more about volunteering with us. Another day I might be leading living history. So I'll be dressed up in my 1880s period attire, walking around the Bernhard trying to help those third graders to sew their little marble bags and learn more about what it's like to work hard on a farm in the 1800s.
So there's a lot of variety, in other words.
Variety, yes. Variety is good. And that's part of why I just really like this work also, is that every day is different. And even, if we're doing exhibit, each topic is different. And each museum is different. And looking at the collection that we have available to display, there's just so many avenues to pursue.
So it seems like you change or rotate some of the exhibits, or add things at different times of the year. So if somebody goes to visit once, they could go 6 months later and have another experience.
That's true, yes. The Bernhard Museum. I'll talk about that for a minute if I could. So that museum was originally a hotel and stage stop here in Auburn. It was built in 1851 as the Traveler's Rest is what they called it. And it became a family farm, and they added on to it. And so now it's just a really beautiful Victorian era home. But we do rotate our exhibits. So right now it is decorated for the Victorian holiday, Victorian Christmas. And so we bring out a lot of greenery, a lot of traditional decor. We talk about the foods that would be served at a traditional holiday feast. And then we also put out a lot of toys on display, from the time period, because that's what Christmas is about for a lot of children is those really fun toys. So so that's what you can see now through the holidays. Or if you come back after the holidays, we rotate it for our spring exhibit, and we change out all of the dresses that are on display so that it sort of changes with the season, which is good for the artifacts too, because then that way we're taking things off display and not leaving them for too long, but it gives you that new thing to look at. So especially if you like fashion and these historic dresses and clothing, it's a good idea to go back different times of the year.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I enjoy that. So do you have a favorite museum, or is there one that you think that the public would be really surprised to hear about?
Oh boy. Okay, so I've mentioned the Gold Rush Museum. There's the Bernhard Museum, the Griffith Quarry Museum. I didn't mention the Placer County Museum yet. That one's the historic courthouse here in Auburn. And so that's kind of our main headquarters. We have here in Auburn also is the DeWitt History Museum. And each museum is just so different. So it's kind of hard to say a favorite. I like the DeWitt Museum because it's the most modern that we talk about. It was a World War II military hospital that was built right here in Auburn, a huge employer for the area, and it became a state hospital. And so the topics that we share at that museum are sort of, new as far as 20th century topics, things that might be relevant to people today. So I find that to be a really interesting museum. We have one in Forest Hill called the Forest Hill Divide Museum, and one in Dutch Flat called the Golden Drift Museum.
And how are those after the forest fires, and are they intact?
They are. We're so fortunate that the fire services that were responding and all of the personnel that were just doing their best job and their best effort to fight those fires. They did a tremendous job. We were nervous, because there were a couple fires. At one point, there was a fire within, not very far, within a mile or two of each of our museums. But in the end, they survived very well. We went and checked on everything, and there's no damage, and so we're really, really fortunate. We feel that way. But being up in those mountain communities, it's definitely something that you think about.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. If you were offering advice to somebody who was looking at a career in museum management or anthropology or something like that, what might you say?
I would say so. A lot of people they think about a history degree or and that becoming a teacher is a good option, and it really is. But some people, if they don't want to be a teacher but they love history, working in museums is another option, definitely. I studied public history, and so that gave me the tools and the information that I needed to be able to preserve documents and records and artifacts and interpret them for the public. So I think if somebody wanted to get into the museum field like that, it's a good idea to volunteer at museums to get that sort of hands-on experience. Do internships, definitely, because the more you can build those skills and that knowledge, the more able you will be to just really go far in this field. I always looked for every opportunity to learn a little something more.
That sounds like great advice. So speaking of volunteers, how do you get people to staff your museums? Because with 8 museums and many hours that they're open, you probably need a lot of people.
We really do, and for them to be free as well. Part of the reason we're able to do this is because we have volunteers that they work with us, and we care about them, and I think they care about us too. I should mention that you're one of our volunteers as well. That's how we met, and without volunteers, we really couldn't do the work that we do. So we put together a calendar, but we're for the different museum spots that are open, and each museum is open at different schedule. Some, like the Placer County Museum, is open 7 days a week. Some, like our new Fruitvale Schoolhouse Museum, is only open one afternoon a month. That's partly because we just opened that museum this summer, and we're still working to see, how many volunteers are interested in it, and reasonably how open can we be at that museum. But volunteers that are people that are interested in volunteering, they usually come and talk to me and kind of learn about the program and what it takes. We ask for 10 hours a month, if possible, as a commitment, just to kind of keep the information fresh, which is usually about 2 days a month. But like I said, we're very flexible about that because, life happens also, and it's volunteer time. So we try to really set them up for success, though. We do a training program so that they can really see what each museum is like, learn about the history, and see where they might find themselves fitting in and feeling really comfortable. So some people like to do those living history programs and work with the third graders, and those are really fun, very busy days. Or some might prefer to work at the courthouse or the Placer County Museum, where you get a lot of visitors, but not everybody is going to be asking you a ton of questions. So it just kind of depends. Walking tour docents. So you're one of our walking tour docents, which I think is fabulous. That's a whole different experience, which I'm sure you can speak to a little bit. But that one is always different, I'm sure. And
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you like being a walking tour docent?
Well, I love being a docent. It's great fun. As I said, I'm a retired teacher, and so I love engaging with visitors to Auburn and the families that show up. I learn a lot from them. You'd be surprised what experiences people bring to the community. And when they ask questions for which I don't know an answer, I'm looking it up and learning on the spot, and it's really enjoyable. And I like the other docents quite a bit, and I have to say, you take care of your docents really well.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very appreciative. That's very, very nice.
Thank you.
Good parties.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
One thing I think is kind of nice for docents, a lot of people are new to this area when they approach me to think about volunteering or about learning more. And it's a great way to just learn about your community and to meet people also, because you don't need to know anything about local history to be a volunteer with us, because we'll teach you what you need to know, but you just need to be open to learning, to meeting people, and to sharing information with the public. Hopefully they walk away with a little deeper understanding or appreciation of history.
Yeah.
And so one thing I think is really nice about our volunteers is that, bottom line, everybody comes from different places, but we all care about our community, and we all have an interest in sharing history. And so at least, we all have something in common to get us started.
It really makes you feel happy and proud to be part of this small town area, and it's been fun. I've learned a lot on the training program. I was very impressed with the training program, but then I continue to learn from the other docents and also from some of the guests who come and they've lived through some of these areas or traveled. And I'll never forget one of the times I had my cousin come through, who is Swedish, and it was in the Bernhard, and I was explaining to her the different objects in one of the rooms, and I said, and this is a box where the men's collars would be. And she said, oh, of course, the word on that is a Swedish word for collar. And I was like, wow, it just hit me that people came to Auburn after the gold rush from all over the world, everywhere. And so somebody had brought that pretty box all the way from Sweden. So it was quite an eye-opener.
Yeah.
Well, so I know this is a special time of the year with December coming up. Do you have any special programs for the holidays?
We do. So this Friday, December 9th, from 5 to 8 p.m. is our S'mores and Stories event. This is an annual event that we hold every year at the Bernhard Museum. It's our only evening event that we hold at the Bernhard Museum. And so this one is fun because we, just open up the grounds. Like everything else, it's all free. It's a really good program for families to come if they want to, but we put out a fire pit so you can roast s'mores. We'll have live music. We have storytellers that'll tell us some wonderful 19th century stories. We open up, there's the historic winery that's on the grounds there. We have hot cocoa and, just interactives and crafts for the kids, things like that. So it's just a lot of fun. And we'll open up the house as well so people can do sort of an abridged tour. It'll be a walk through that evening, but we always encourage everyone to just come back and really get a chance to take the full tour next time.
That's true. Okay, what was the time and of that particular event?
That one is Friday, December 9th from 5 to 8 p.m. And we actually also have another event on Saturday, the 10th, called it's Old Town Classic Christmas that they have here in Auburn. And we participate in that as well. We open the Placer County Museum from 5 to 8 p.m. for that. And it's nice because if it's raining for the event or if it's cold outside, the courthouse is a wonderful place to go to get warm, to get dry, to use the restroom. But we also have crafts for the kids. We have cookies and apple cider. Mrs. Claus will be reading stories in the treasury. So it's just a really warm, and live music as well. We'll have some flautists that will be playing and an orchestra. And it's just a nice, comfortable place to go and have fun. So we'll do that this Saturday, which is the 10th. Of December, and also on the 17th will be open as well for Classic Christmas.
That sounds terrific. So do you have other special events during the year?
We do. We try to have different events different times of the year. One of the big ones is Heritage Trail. And so for the Heritage Trail, while we have 8 museums and the archive and collections facility, we partner with museums throughout Placer County. And this last year, I think there were 28 museums that were part of the Heritage Trail. And so in a sort of geographic area, museums will host a day on the trail. And so if a museum usually charges, they will waive their admission fees, and there's going to be just a lot more events going on. So, for example, when the Bernhard Museum has its trail day, people can go there that don't get a chance to do living history and still get a chance to do a lot of the living history experience. So it's great for kids and for families, that might not be third graders in the area, to still make fruit crates and still, have a little bit of that historic experience, wash some laundry.
And one of the other great tasks, of course, at this particular Bernhard Museum was the children had to empty the chamber pots in the morning, and children who go through the tour love to hear about that.
Chamber pots are a big deal, yes.
And of course, the Victorian era was the era when we first started celebrating Christmas on a grand scale, and Queen Victoria really made it a special event. So that's great that you celebrate that there. So is there anything I've forgotten to ask you about?
Oh boy, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. One is that we also have the Archive and Research Center. And so for any of our museums and for the Archive and Research Center, if you want to visit us, learn more about us, the best place to do that is on our website, which is www.placer.ca.gov/museums. Or you can call us on the phone at 530-889-6500, or follow us on Facebook, and you can find those links on our website. The Archive and Research Center is, we open that by appointment for anyone that wants to come and dive into a historic topic here in Placer County, maybe something that we don't cover in our museums or on our online projects. So And also, the archive, our page on our website has a link for our online catalog, which we're starting to populate. And so, if you want to research land claims, homestead claims, deed records, the for part of your family history or your property history, we have already put a lot of that online. So people can start to do their research at home and then let us know if they're still looking.
Thank you so much. It has been an honor to talk with you this morning. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.